Would you go ahead and stand with us? Jesus paid it all, and all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain on me, washed through white as snow. I hear the Savior say, thy strength indeed is small. Child of weakness, watch and pray. Find in me thine all in all. 'Cause Jesus paid it all, and all to him I owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, oh, he washed through white as snow. Church, we've been in this Arrow series, and there is nothing to build your house on but the Father and Jesus Christ. And if you're not building it on, you're shooting your arrows at the wrong target. And if you have built it on Jesus Christ, let's sing this out about who paid our debt. Oh, praise the Lord who paid my debt and raised his life from the dead. Oh, praise the Lord who paid my debt and raised his life.
Every week we take the opportunity to go ahead and participate as church family, as community, as followers of Christ in this thing that we call communion. For those of you in the room, there's something that looks like this on either the back of the chair or leg of the chair close to you. And then for those of you online, you're going to need something that will help you remember the body and the blood. This is something that we do. There may be somebody here maybe this is your first time. If you identify with Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, this is a time for you to share with us, to celebrate. Because we get the opportunity to remember what Christ has done for us. He's made a way. So, for those of you in the room, go ahead and peel back that top layer. There's a piece of bread there. And what that helps us do is not forget the body. The body that was hung on a cross, that was bruised, that was beaten, that was ripped up, that was torn, that was punctured for you and for me as followers of Christ. God made a way, and He used Jesus, His Son, His perfect Son, to take your place, to take my place. Let's not forget that right now. Also, when you're ready, there's some juice under that next layer. What this does is helps us not forget the blood. We say it a lot around here, there's life in the blood. Never more true than in moments when we remember what Christ's blood has done when it's washed over us. It has cleaned us. Again, making a way for us to be in relationship with our Heavenly Father through His Son, Jesus. Let's not forget that either. I want to thank you. Many of you, this is your church home, and you participate in worship by giving regularly. You may choose to do that on a text-to-give thing. That's what Gayla and I do regularly. Every Friday morning, that's the first text that I typically have is in giving to my church. There are so many other things going on. If you've been around here any length of time at all, you have seen the number of baptisms, or maybe participated. Maybe even you have been baptized. For those of the rest of us, this may be news to you. We've had about 40 baptisms since the first of the year. I'd mentioned it to the first service. I didn't know there were even 40 people in Kinmundy, to tell you the truth. And it's exciting to see what God is doing in the lives of His people, and your giving is a part of that. Your worship in that way means so much. For those of you, we've got these folders that are in the room. Go ahead and open those up. If this is one of your first times with us, fill out the red card. We want to connect with you. You'll probably get a phone call from me within the next couple of days, but you won't if there's not a phone number on it. So please help us out by doing that. We want to connect with you. There's a blue card in there as well, and what that does is for next steps. If you've got a next step you need to take, maybe you are wanting to serve in some capacity as a ministry partner. We've got all kinds of roles that folks can participate in. There are a variety of other things that are going on in the life of the church as well that you could be a part of. For those of you that are newer to the church, this is the last Sunday of the month. We typically have the VIP lunch right after this service, starting at 11:30, out in the other part of the building. It's a free lunch. If this is your first time, we want you to come. If this is still kind of a new spot for you, you're wanting to connect, that's what we do at that meeting. It's about 45 minutes long, free lunch for you and your family. We want you to enjoy that. We want to get to know you. We want to connect with you and find out maybe there's another next step for you. and your family. We'd love to be a part of that and love for you to be a part of it as well. There is some other things that are going on. This week, starting on Wednesday morning at 9 o'clock, there is Grief Share. I've been through that program. It's a 13-week deal. It is excellent for those of you who have lost a loved one due to death. Excellent stuff. If you can't necessarily attend that particular at that time, go on their website because there's groups meeting all over the area that you might be able to plug into. There are a variety of other things going on. It's coming up fairly soon. The 10th of September is going to be our student ministries. Our middle school will start on Sunday late afternoon, and then our high school students will start after that. So be plugging in, looking for ways to do that. And we are so glad that you're here. With those cards or maybe the use of the offering envelopes that are in there, you can put those in the boxes that are at the back of the worship space here in the room. For those of you online, I'm sure there's something on the platform that you're using. Maybe you choose to do a bill pay or the text to give option. Those are great ways to worship. Would you please stand with me as we continue doing that? Lord, we want to thank you that you are constantly in front of us, around us, leading us, guiding us, sometimes in spite of us, but you have always been. Thank you that as you bring about new life, that we get to be a part of it, we get to experience life change as a part of this church family and community, as a part of your family. And it's in your Son's name, Jesus, we pray, and all God's people said.
When I was lost and all alone, your presence was where I found home.
So my brother and my cousin went on a trip to the Grand Tetons, and the geography there is very much different than what we have here in the plains of Illinois. In fact, they have other creatures than what we do here. They have these things called bears. Supposedly we got some around. I've never seen one, but they got bears there. One of the requirements for them to go and kind of take that trip is if they were going to go and they were going to do all the pathways and do all this hiking, is they were required to take bear spray with them. So they bought it, and my brother turns to my cousin and says, I wonder when we have to put it on. Bear repellent, you know. Anyway, yeah, they're goobers, I'm telling you. Luckily, they didn't use it that way. But when they got back and they were back in the car and they were heading out of there, they stopped by somewhere else, but for some reason the can got put in the front glass of their rented car, and it heated up in there, and believe it or not, it exploded. They didn't get their deposit back. We'll just say that. Here's the thing. Owning something is often different than knowing how to use it. Can I get an oh yeah? Owning something is different often than knowing how to use it. And we have some things probably we don't even know what we use them for anymore. But that, I think, can also be true when it comes to family and when it comes to parenting, when it comes to kids. We often approach these relationships, and sometimes we don't know how to use these things or how to kind of deal with them appropriately. In this series called Arrows, we are studying together how God has an idea of what success looks like for us. He has a target in mind, and really that's heaven. And for us as parents, that should drive each and every one of us. So we're looking together today on the work that it takes to put our boots on and set forth on that path. And now this is different than how I usually dress here on a Sunday morning, but I wanted you to see that I've got my boots on today, because here's the deal. Often the attitude and the attire that I wear often reflects what I am getting ready to do. And here's the thing. When these boots are on, stuff is happening. Stuff is happening. It has a lot to do with how we approach and set ourselves and what we're going to do and how we see things ahead. And so when it comes to the idea of parenting, and when it comes to the idea of family, when it comes to the idea of spouse, I need to have my boots on and be ready for what's coming ahead. You see, I'm trying to get in the right state of mind, especially for this sermon, and I hope you have come prepared for that as well. In fact, Paul said to Timothy, in charging him for preaching and engaging people and telling them truth, he told them this: I want you to study and show yourself approved unto God as a worker that doesn't need to be ashamed, but can rightly divide the word of truth that'll cut to people's hearts. And that commission was to Timothy, but it's also to me. Now, people say to me, oh, you're getting ready to do your one day of work a week here on Sunday morning, aren't you? Well, that's not completely true, and I know that they're joking. But the truth is, if I do this right, if I'm going to preach right, if I'm going to do that, it takes a lot of me. It takes putting the work in. And so here's the deal. I'm come ready, and I hope that you're ready. Another thing on top of that is because when I prepare for something like this, I know I've got to have something to say to you guys. But not only that, by the end of the week, if I've done it right, I've got something to say to you guys. And so may you and I get ready on this journey together, because I believe this is so important and what Satan is trying to attack our families each and every day. Here's the other thing. I want to give you something for the fight ahead, because I want you to know there is going to be a fight ahead. There is something coming for you. There is a war, and our kids are a weapon that we can wage the war with. You see, how I approach marriage, how I approach raising my kids, it really takes an analogy of getting my boots on. One of my favorite movies is Tombstone. Anybody else here with me? And one of the final scenes of Tombstone, we have Doc Holliday, who is laying in a sanitarium, and he looks down at his feet, and he says, I'll be. That's funny. Now, there's another word in there. I just didn't put it up there, okay? I'll be. That's funny. And he says that because guess what? He doesn't have his boots on. He lived a life that was so rugged and rough that he knew that he was headed for Boot Hill and that he was going to die with his boots on, but how does he end up dying? In a sanitarium, not the way that he imagined. Here's the deal. I don't want us to get caught with our boots not on. I want us to be ready because we are waging war. Paul encourages us to put on the full armor of God. And one of the things he says is don't forget your feet. And so when you look at Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 15, it says, be fitted with the readiness that comes with the gospel of peace. We have good new shoes that we need to put on, that we need to take to the world, but we really need to take it also to our family. And now, as Paul was saying this, I think he was imagining a Roman soldier, because that was the character of that day. And what they wore was something like this, not a normal boot like you and I see, but something that we might say more on an athletic field because they had cleats on them, metal studs that were on the bottom. Now, the reason for that is because they were a people that took ground. They were ready to conquer. And that's the way it needs to be in our Christian life as well. There is a war out there, and we need to be ready to take some ground. We need to be ready to go at it. We need the traction that it takes. Because here's the deal, relationships take work. And it's a mentality that we need to have. Now, here's the deal. I realize that marriage is not for the faint of heart. You probably do too. And raising kids is not easy. And you're gonna say to me, wait until they turn teenagers. I know, it's like nailing jello to a wall. Sure, I got you. It's like kicking a whale down the beach. I got you. I'm not there just yet. I don't know how tough it's gonna be yet, but I wanna be ready for it. But here's the other thing I wanna say. We've been looking through this idea through the lens of this verse found in Psalm 127. And it reads this way in verse 1. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand and watch in vain. This instruction here is that this very idea that you can't build a house, and if you build a house without God, it is just not going to stand. Now, to us in a physical form, we might say, well, what does that mean for us? But I think we're talking about the spiritual more than anything else and what God is trying to do with us. Because I think at the end of our life, if we have built the wrong thing, we're going to feel meaningless in our life because God's mission wasn't in it. We need to remember that we have a bullseye, a target in mind that God is wanting us to seek after. He wants us to seek after the kingdom of God. He wants us to seek after heaven. Here's what Proverbs chapter 3 says in verse 5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. If you're needing guidance in your life, you need to make sure you're setting up at the right bullseye. You see, the goal for us is not just being like Christ. That's something we want to pursue. But more than just that is that we want to be with Christ. We want to become like him, and we want to be with him. Becoming more an example of what he and his character was, but not only that, going along with his mission. Setting ourselves up to where he is and our mentality is. And so for that, we need some instruction. So I want to be successful in my marriage, don't you? And for that to be successful, I need to center myself on God so that my family might also be centered on God. To not make God my all is really to build in vain. It's missing the mark. And that very definition is the definition for sin, missing the mark. So let us not miss the mark today. May we feed ourselves ready. May we set ourselves up with the right approach. May we focus in on really what's most important. Understand, you can do a lot of right things and still miss the mark. You can want some of the right things. You can have the right equipment. You can have the right stance. You can be in the right position and still miss the mark. And some of us have some great desires for our family and for our kids. We want to see our kids be successful. We want to see them walk on their own. We want to see them get a 4.0. We want to see them get the scholarship. We want to see them get accepted in those right areas. We want to see those things. But here's the thing. What we might be shooting at right now might not be the house that we're supposed to be building. And that house would be a house built in vain. I think sometimes that's hard for us to hear because we often want a lot of good things, but it could end tragically. And in fact, Jesus talks about that a little bit in Matthew chapter 7 about the wise man and the foolish man, about the rock and the sand and building upon the rock. Here's the deal. When they first move into that house that was built by sand, I bet it looked wonderful. I bet it looked structurally just great. It was the dream house by the beach. That's where I want to be. That wasn't until the elements showed up. That was till the struggle comes up. That was until the tragedy comes up. I bet it looked great. But here's what Jesus says in John chapter 15, verse 5, that I am the vine and you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit, and apart from me, you can do nothing. Your labor will be in vain if it is not in God and centered on his desire for you. That's what this text is saying. It isn't saying that work isn't important. Understand, work is important. We all have to put that effort in. We need to all put our boots on and have that mentality in mind. But what the text is saying is that as you're laboring, as you are working, as you are going out, as you are busy, seek him and trust him in everything that you are putting your hand to. Make sure that you're seeking him and giving him your all. In fact, let's couple that right along with this verse in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 58. It reads, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. I was talking to my uncle, who's been preaching for about 50 years now at the same church, if you can believe that. And I asked him what one of his biggest fears is in ministry, and he said this, it's not that I haven't been busy. In fact, he said, it's that I've done a lot of things. I hope they made a difference. I hope they made a difference. Because sometimes we are busy about some things that might be good, but the overall picture, I hope it made a difference. And so I think that's why we need to rely on God in that 1 Corinthians passage, because it reminds us that if it is labored in the Lord, it is going to produce a harvest, whether we see it or not. So let's not fear about the wrong thing. Let's rest in what the right thing is. There are two things I think can be true at the same time. You can labor in vain if it isn't what the Lord desires, but you can also not in vain that is also in the Lord. You see, there's a tension there that I'm trying to explain with that. And understand, we need some tension in life, and a lot of people are trying to rid themselves of all tension. But understand this, tension is what holds bridges up. You need tension for work to be done, for proactiveness to be done, for good work, for something to be complete, for God and you to fulfill what you desire. You need some tension in your life for growth really to happen. We see tension in Scripture on this idea of faith and works. And when we bring religion into this, it usually has a tendency to be on one side or the other. Either we focus on faith and we don't focus on works, or we focus on works and we forget the faith part of it, and we have a trouble here. But really, I think they're both sides of the same coin. So what is it? Is it being good, or is it doing good for God? Same side, two different sides of the same coin. Salvation, we understand, comes through faith in Jesus Christ. That's what we see in Ephesians. But we also see that baptism now is what saves you in 1 Peter. And then later on, James says this, that faith without works is dead. Well, here's the truth. We need to put our faith into practice. When we put our faith in God, I think inevitably it leads us into action. It should promote us and challenge us to grow and develop and to bear fruit, to produce work and good deeds. You see, trusting in God leads to doing things for God. It's kind of like if we went out here to Forbes and we got inside of a rowboat and I just put one oar in and we're just doing one oar and we're getting nowhere. Or I put it in on the other side. We're going nowhere. But if I put both of them in and we get a little timing in, it produces direction. It produces a point. It produces traction. You see, it's a different type of mentality here because they're both the same coin. Jesus approached this when it came to Mary and Martha one time. Because Jesus was visiting them one time, and Mary was sitting there at the feet of Jesus with others, and the living room was full, all focused on Jesus and his teaching, and they were worshiping him. And Martha's in the back room inside of the kitchen, stirring the gravy and trying to bake the biscuits at the same time. And she finally gets tired because the biscuit gets burned, and she gets in there and says, Jesus, why don't you tell Mary to get back in the kitchen like a good woman's supposed to? Now, a woman said this, okay, so it's okay. Here's the deal. In this moment, we have a problem, and Jesus approaches this. You see, it's not bad to serve. That's what Martha was doing. It's not bad to worship. That's what Mary was doing. The problem is when we begin to look down on each other for the position and where we are. But I don't believe you can truly worship God appropriately without the desire to come alongside that and do some work. And often I think you first need to become a Mary and be sitting at the feet of Jesus, gaining some wisdom, gaining some worship, loving and empowering you so that you might go out and serve like a Martha. Because here's the thing, if we're just a Martha and we go out there and work, eventually somebody is going to criticize our work and I'm done working. You get what I'm saying? We need something to empower us over the long haul. Jesus says this in Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. He says, look, I'm sending you as sheep among wolves. So be shrewd as a snake and as harmless as a dove. Two word pictures he gives here. One about a dove, and that's kind of a picture of spirit, picture of worship, a dependence on God. And the other one is a picture of a snake. And we know what a picture of a snake looks like. It's cunning, it's aggressive, it's a hunter. And you and I need to trust in the Lord that he will do what he does. But you and I need to do everything that we can do as well. Oliver Cromwell said this, trust God, but keep your powder dry. The idea behind that whole thing is that, yeah, we need to trust God to lead us in the right direction, but that doesn't mean that there won't be a battle along the way, that there won't be problems that are going to ensue. So we need to be ready and prepared for them. And I think that applies a lot of places. And I want to be a marriage that is ready for that. I want to be a parent that is ready for that, preparing myself for the job. Yeah, that applies in a lot of places. You want to be married? Maybe try brushing your teeth. Probably help. We need to do what we can and trust God in only what he can do. See, hard work is important, but don't blame God on your laziness. I've heard some people said, well, I'm just going to let go and let God. I don't know, man. I'm just going to let go and let God in my marriage. Hey, here's what Proverbs chapter 6, verse 6 says. It says, take a lesson from the ant, you lazy bones. I love this verse. Take a lesson from the ant, you lazy bones, and learn from their ways and become wise. How about Proverbs chapter 24? It says, I walked by the field of a lazy person, their vineyard, one who had no common sense, and I saw that it was overgrown with nettles and it was covered with weeds. The walls were broken down. And then I looked and I thought about it and I learned this lesson, a little bit of sleep, a little bit of slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And poverty will pounce on you like a bandit. Its scarcity will attack you like an armed robber. None of us want to have a marriage that is described like that. One where the walls are broken down and one that's full of weeds. We don't want that said about our family. And we want to take this seriously. We are called to be overseers. We are called to maintenance because weeds come back. Only God can be the leader of our homes, and he has put us in charge to make sure we point in that direction. And we need to be willing to go and put in the hard work and not just, well, I'm just going to let go and let God. If you want success to happen in your home, it's done intentionally. And the good news is, understand, good parents are not born. Good parents are made. So maybe you didn't have a good parent. The good news is that doesn't have to be genetic. The good news is you can put in the hard work because good parents are made. There's no good parent gene. And maybe it doesn't come as natural. That's okay because we can all put in the work. And there's grace, and maybe if you haven't been the parent that God has called you to be, we can work on being and becoming a good one. Here's what Proverbs chapter 4 and verse 18, it says this, The way of the righteous is like the first gleam of dawn, which shines even brighter until it meets the most light of day. So maybe you have started out really dim. There's still time for you to step in the right direction. So it's important for you and I, even though we might have some regret, even though we might have some heartache, we maybe might have some I wish I'd with some heaviness, but God still wants to set a path and has a path set in front of you, and it is your job to take a step in that direction. It's important that you still have time to make a move. It's time to boot up, and God will bless your efforts. Here's what Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 8 says, finishing is better than starting. Patience is better than pride. And with God, the ending can be better than the beginning. So you might be going through something rough right now. That's okay. There will be days like that. But keep going. Boot up. I want to share with you some things that aren't just suggestions, they're things that I want you to put into practice. And one of the things that you need to do is you need to have a rally in your family. And first and foremost, I think this starts with your spouse. You wonder why the ping pong table is here? Get ready for the demonstration. My wife and I come by this naturally. I just want you to know this. This is something, we're just natural at this. This is my lovely wife, Chelsea, up here. And what I want to tell you about her is she is great and a gift of God for me in a lot of ways. But our first years of marriage were awful rough. I mean, in a lot of ways, we had just come out of Bible college and lived our own way. But when you get married and start sharing a household with somebody, things change, just so you know. The other thing about it is, when she and I were first married, we'd often kind of be at odds with one another because it felt like we were in competition with one another. A rally is really a tennis term. It's a tennis term where you're not necessarily just trying to beat the other opponent. So it's not a Seth versus Chelsea. It's changing the mindset to it's Seth and Chelsea, and it's not 1 to 5 or 1 to 8 or whatever. It's more of we're trying to get a higher number. I think my marriage changed quite a bit when I understood that mentality. Because one of the things I learned is when you're in competition with one another, nobody's happy. It becomes a problem where I'm just trying to, well, I don't like what you said. That made me feel bad, and so I'm going to send it back at you. Or she's going to send it back at me. Did you see that? She's a better ping pong player. Anyway. And I usually lose. Okay, so, and what I find is the mentality of the game really needs to change, because I don't think God desires the competition between her and I like that. I think he desires for us to work together to set ourselves up for some success. Not 1 versus 2, but a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And a going back and forth to become better. Now here's the deal. Every once in a while, one of us is going to drop the ball. There's going to be some pain. Every once in a while, I'm going to put a little stink on it. And it'll be my fault, but that's okay. But sometimes it goes the other way. But the truth is, the more we become better at this, the more I remember all the time that even when I get something I don't deserve, or the ball gets passed to me hard, or it's a struggle, I still have an opportunity to lob it up instead of being spiteful and spike it back. Does that make sense? And here's the thing. This works not just in our marriage, but this works in our world and with our kids. My job is that I might initiate and reciprocate with my wife, because I'm trying to set up for success. You can't do that in competition when you're looking out for yourself. And so I want to reciprocate so that not just we are successful, but that our kids can be successful. Because they can see victories. And they can see the beauty, because here's the truth. The world is not going to show them that. We spend time with our coworkers. We spend time with people who are going to throw stink on it. But we have an opportunity, even when the stink comes, to lob it up Even when I'm not my best, my wife has an opportunity to lob it up. Or something is a struggle, I have an opportunity to lob it up. Didn't Jesus say something about turning the other cheek? I think he did. Is this what he meant? Probably. I have always an opportunity to bless so that my family can see it and so that the world will see it. We have a tendency to say, well, I just want to put down the paddle. I'm just going to take my ball and go. I'm going to hit it like you hit it at me. But I don't think that's the blessing of what God wants to give you and I. I think there are some other things that go along with this that I want to share with you because it's a rally. It's not a competition. It's building on something. So my kids know how to deal when backspin happens, when spite comes. It starts here. It's rallying with my spouse. It's rallying with my kids. It's rallying with my friends. It's rallying with my coworkers. It's rallying with my church. It's rallying with my acquaintances. You're teaching something countercultural that the world so desperately needs to hear because they aren't going to hear it anywhere else. We have been called to develop this. I have a tendency that at the end of the day, because I'm a male, and often I want to leave everything I have on the table when it comes to work. Because often us find a sense of not worth, but pride as well in what we do. And so it's easy for me to just leave it all on the table at work. That's what I want to do. And I don't have anything left to give when I get home. And I become often an absent father. Or I don't want to take up the extra slack. Or I don't give anything to my wife. I feel like I have a certain word allotment and I'm just not ready to give. And it takes maximum effort, really, to do what really matters. So what really matters? The job? I'm sure it matters. But I think your kids and your family really is what truly matters most at the end of the day. Even when you're feeling drained, you need to rally with them. It also takes research. God has all called us to do life together, and therefore it is important that you research your spouse and that you research your kids. I went to school, and I crammed a 4-year degree in 5 years. There's a lot of papers involved, and research, believe it or not, has to be done. That was the same for me in school, but it's also the same for me in life now. When it comes to my wife, inside of my phone, I keep tabs on my wife. And I keep tabs on the things that she likes. Why? So that I might be able to give. And not only that, I need to keep track of some things and ways I can give, an opportunity I can give. Now, she told me you need 2 lists. You need a on the diet list and off the diet list to be able to accomplish those properly. At least that's what she says. But it's important that we love our spouse in that way. Because here's some things. There are some things that are different about you and your relationships, how she was raised, how I was raised, the things that we differ from, because we're both different kinds of vessels. And this travels on to your kids as well, because your kids are different vessels as well. They're all different arrows, and they serve different purposes. Now, they all belong on the target, and they're all aimed for that, but their vessel might be different in how often that is approached. So you are trying to do the best you can to help that vessel become the best vessel it can so it can reach the target. My desire is that I set up my wife for success, not just so that we have a happy marriage, it's so that she can go to heaven, so I go to heaven, and it's not dependent on that, because I want to help them get there. I want to help my kids get there. Here's the deal. We need to be in touch. There's a book called The 5 Languages. Research your wife. Research your husband. Research so that you best know how to love them. Don't throw your love language onto them. Research them and know how to best do it well. It also takes coaching. I think coaching is a very interesting thing because I think we need to elect certain people into our lives to help us coach towards success. Some people that have done it well or are better in that areas, sometimes it takes coaching. You know what? It's funny to me that professional athletes, the best people in their field, have coaches. They have coaches. In fact, sometimes they even need better coaching to break some of the bad habits that they've been living with so long so that they become better. Understand, practice doesn't make perfect if you are doing the wrong thing. We need to focus on the right thing. We need to have the right perspective. You need to have good coaching. And maybe someday somebody's going to elect you to be a coach in your life, or you will be a coach in their life. We need to understand this and give notice to these things so that we do not just give generals, but we start giving specifics. Here's some things that we have tried to be specific for you from this platform here at Ken Monday Christian Church. You need to be with your family at church weekly. That's a non-negotiable. You need to be with your family and have a meal with them, sitting around a table, face to face, at least 3 times a week. That's a non-negotiable. You need to date your spouse at least 2 times a month. You need to have sexual relations with your spouse at least 8 times a week. Well, I'm trying. At least twice a week. You see, understand this is not a pass or fail. This is doing the work. It's committing. It's setting forth to action. It's saying no to some things so that you can say yes to some of the right things. And some of these are visible steps in which your kids will see and develop some of the same spiritual habits that you are trying to set forth in their life. Understand that coaching is essential. Here's the other thing, humility. It takes us achieving this genuinely through humility. You and I need to grow into that. Here's what Philippians chapter 2 says. It says, do not be selfish. Do not try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others better than yourself. Do not look out for the intentions of your own, but the intentions and the interests of others. You see, humility needs to be in our homes. And we need to think of it in the form of family, because here's the big thing. My kids are going to see me fail. And it's easy for me to go, well, do as I say and not as I do. But that's not intentional and that's not work. The intentional thing to do is when my kids see me fail, and they will, is to handle that appropriately, where I acknowledge what happened, where I show how I am trying to set things right and to grow. Because here's the deal. It is important that we teach our kids how to fail. It is important that we teach kids how mom and dad are still working on it, and we're being intentional on working on it. Kids need to see that, and it takes vulnerability to do that. Last week it was bedtime, my son, and he was inside his room, and I always tell him, no more talking. And I get up, and I go back in his room because guess what? He's talking. I said, son, if I come in here again, there's going to be some stuff happen. Justice will be served. And as I turn and go away, he goes, Dad? I said, okay, son, what? He says, Dad, it's just really hard for me to do. And I go, I know. But the truth is, yeah, me too, son. Sometimes it's the hard thing for me to do. But we need to be clothed with humility. We need to be cloaked with it. We need to wear it. Here's the last thing, perseverance. It takes commitment. It takes tenacity. It takes a constant effort, because parenting is not for the faint of heart. You got to stay in it. You got to commit to it. It's not easy. And when you think it's not working, when you look at them in the eye and say, is there anything going on up there? Are you receiving any of this? When I'm getting tired of hearing my very own voice, I got to stay with it. There's an African folk song that when it's translated to English says this: an old person, when they die, it's as if a library burns. You and I have volumes inside of our life of wisdom that we need to give to our kids, that they need to be shared with, they need to be seen. Stuff that they are going to need along the way. And it is important that we do life with them and that we volley with them so they will take that on and be able to grow from it. Let's not forfeit the opportunity that God has won and placed upon us. You see, it's easy to say, well, I'm just gonna stay out of the way because I'm busy, I'm tired, I'm done. It's easy for me to be vacant. It's easy for me to be absent. But a call to perseverance, you see, that's putting in work. That's putting in the hard. You see, the world says, play dirty. But you need to show your family something different. The world's gonna say, just spin it back at them. But we need to show our family that there's a different way. And when they see it, the world will see it. We choose to commit to our family because we chose them. And just like that, Jesus chose you and me. Stand up on your feet with me right now, will you? Because here's the deal, it's not too late. It is not too late to take a step in the right direction. It is not too late to boot up. It is not too late that when they pop at your direction, that you can lob it up once again. Because God is wanting to do a work in you, and no one else is going to be able to show the world this. No one else is going to show your kids this, but you can. Let's let you and I be different. Let's let the world see something that God created and says, this is what family looks like. Let's be a part of a new generation that calls to action, that puts the boots on, that doesn't stay in the back row, that isn't vacant, because that's the world wants from you. God wants the best for your kids. He wants the best from you. May you be his people, and may he be your God.
This is my testimony.